Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here to talk about episode 2 of This Is Us, which was part 2 of the season opener, which was titled 40. And you guys know that each season of This Is Us opens on the birthday of the main characters, Kate, Kevin, and Randall. But before we get started, you guys know when I do a new painting, I have to show it to you, okay? So I did this painting about a week ago, and I know a lot of y'all like my paintings, and I do thank you. And so this is the latest one. Okay, so episode 2 picks up straight away, okay, from episode 1. And actually, to be honest with you, I didn't even realize that the new episode had started. So I had to go back and, break my notes up because it was all running together. Kate is freaking out when Kevin and Madison return, and she tells them that Rebecca is missing and Miguel went to the bakery, but she wasn't there. And so the police call and they are returning Rebecca. And you guys remember in my last recap, I talked about how confusing it was because Rebecca, I thought we had went missing like 2 seasons ago, but they were showing those same scenes in this episode. So I don't know if she really went missing a season and a half ago when they were at Randall's house. If you guys know and can clear it up for me, please help your girl out. So they've contacted Randall, and Randall is on his way. Of course, he's freaking out because he wanted Rebecca to do this pilot program for people with the onset of Alzheimer's. But of course, due to COVID, it has been canceled. So Kevin tells the police officer, that his fiance had an emergency. And then Kate was like, hold the hell up, what's going on? Like, did he just say fiance? So after the police woman left, Kate is like, well, what's going on? And, so of course he tells her, I don't know if he ever did tell her that they had gotten engaged, because Randall arrives and then Kate apologizes for not calling to say that they had found Rebecca and that, Rebecca was back at the house. And so there were no hugs, of course, because of COVID. And Randall says that he gets tested, 3 times a week, but that wasn't good enough for Kate, because Kate was like, no, let's just do the air hugs. So then Kevin apologizes for Rebecca, getting lost, says that it's cool and that no one could have known that this was going to happen. And so, Kevin and Kate are really going out of their way, to make Randall feel better, to bring him back into the fold. And Kate is like, why am I suffering? Why is my relationship with Randall suffering? Because him and Kevin had this fight and they're not speaking to each other and they've fallen out. And so, it's starting to stress her out because, she loves Randall as if he was her biological brother. So we get a flashback scene, with William, and he's watching Randall as he thinks back to Laurel giving birth in their apartment. And so by now, William left the baby at the fire station. The fireman comes out, finds the baby, takes the baby to the hospital, and coincidentally, the baby is placed in the are they called incubators, or the crib, the little nursery things that they put the babies in, the little glass crib thing that they put the babies in the nursery at the hospital. And so it just so happens that it's placed next to Kevin and Kate in the nursery. And so William is standing there and he's looking, having this flashback. And then we have, back in the present time, Rebecca wakes up and surprised to see Randall, but of course she's very happy that he's there. And he tells her that Kate called, but Beth and the girls aren't there. And so of course Rebecca's confused as to why did he come and not bring the rest of the family, but she's also happy that he's there. Rebecca explains to Randall that the reason she got really confused when she was at the restaurant was because she came out, or when she came out of the bakery and went to the restaurant, she thought she saw William. And then it just, because William's gone now. He died from cancer a couple of seasons ago. And so it really stressed her out. And then she apologized, about the trial period and how, she wasn't able to go after he had went through all this drama to convince her to go. And so then Rebecca starts scratching her arm, and then Randall's like, what's going on? So she tells him that she got into some poison ivy and it caused a rash. And so then Rebecca asks, about Beth and the girls again, even though she had just asked, and he told her that they weren't coming. So now Randall realizes that things are getting worse. And so Rebecca apologizes about the trial study being canceled, again, like she's just so confused at this point. You guys know when Rebecca gets to the hospital, they realize something is wrong. And so in this flashback scene, we have the nurse, basically telling Jack that at this point, all he can do is pray for Rebecca and the kids and that everything is going to work out. So then in the modern day, Kate tells Kevin that he needs to talk to Randall because he's acting really weird towards her. And they need to do their birthday chant, because they have this little thing that they do. So all the traditions are going out the window at this point. And so then Randall leaves out of Rebecca's room and goes into the bathroom. And he looks in the medicine cabinet and finds this medication that Rebecca has been taking. So downstairs, Toby returns with a cake that he's gone out and bought, for the birthday celebration. And Miguel explains that when they first went to the cabin, Rebecca was doing fine. So instead of staying for a week, they ended up staying much longer. And she was doing so much better the longer that they were there. So then Toby says that every morning he takes 20 milligrams of an antidepressant, and he was feeling much better. And when he called, for a refill, the doctor told him that he was on auto refill. And then it was like hearing auto refill, like I never have to call in for a prescription. It let him know that he would be taking these antidepressants forever. And so he was basically, letting Miguel know that being in this, at the cabin, helped Rebecca a lot. It was, actually, helping sort of like a self-medication, She was in a familiar place, a place that brought her great joy and happiness. She didn't have to deal with the fumes and all of that of being in the city, the toxins in the air. And that, being in this, in this clear environment and peaceful environment was probably helping her. And so when they were having that conversation, I was thinking that it was going to come out that Rebecca was feeling so much better that she stopped taking the medication. And that was the medication that Randall had seen in the medicine cabinet. But instead, it turned out that there was actually an allergic reaction to the antihistamine that she had been prescribed for the poison ivy, and then whatever she was taking for the Alzheimer's, like they were giving her some kind of drug or prescription for that. And so, once they realized that was what was going on, then of course they were able to help Rebecca. And then all I could think to myself is, here come Randall with his self-righteous indignation. He thinks that he's the only one that knows what's best for Rebecca, and everybody else is idiots and don't know what they're doing. So we go to another flashback scene, and William is in the chapel at the hospital, and he's praying and he's crying, and he's holding Randall, and he's trying to get to go to the clinic, but she says no, she doesn't want to go. And so she begs him to get her something for the pain, and he is so torn, about wanting her to do better and be a good mother. And the fact that he can't care for Randall on his own. And so we learned that he did go and get her some narcotics from somewhere, or some heroin or whatever it was that she was taking to help her ease the pain. And she ended up having an overdose. And then it might have also been other complications from the fact that she gave birth I believe she gave birth in the apartment, because we never did see her actually going to the hospital and delivering the baby in the hospital. So as he's running out of the chapel, Jack is actually coming into the chapel, because remember, the nurse told him that at this point, the only thing that was going to help Rebecca was prayer. So Jack begins to pray about his father and how he hoped that he would change, because you guys know that Jack's father was an alcoholic. So that's why he gave up on God, because he felt like, even though he was a good kid, he went into the military, he tried to take care of the father, take care of the mother, nothing ever worked out. And now here he is, married, trying to be a good husband and a good father. And now his wife's life is in jeopardy, and possibly his baby's lives are in jeopardy. So he asks if God, was mocking him, and he's angry with God, but has to humble himself and ask, and beg God to please. So Jack wants to hang up, and his dad senses, that the call is about more than what, Jack calling to say hello. And so he blurts out that when he used to go to church, he prayed that his kids would turn out better than he did. And so he wishes Jack a happy birthday. So then we have the doctor walk up, and so he tells Jack that, Kyle passed away. That was one of the triplets that passed. And then we have a scene where he tells Rebecca about Randall. And if you guys remember, Jack and the doctor had like this long conversation, and then they went to the nursery to see the babies. And, it turned out that the baby that had been found at the fire station was brought to the hospital, and it was put in, the little nursery bed next to Kate and Kevin. And so Jack thinks that this is divine intervention, and that God knew that Kyle was going to pass away. But because they had made room in their lives and they were planning for 3 children, that this was God telling them, or giving this little black baby an opportunity, to have a better life. And so he brings Rebecca to the nursery, to see the babies, and then he tells her his theory about the little black baby, and they decide to adopt Randall. So then back in the present day, Kevin runs out to thank Randall for coming before he leaves the cabin. And he tells Randall, he's having a boy and a girl, and let Randall know that he was like the first person that he told. And he asks Randall, do you have any advice? Because you have girls, and you'll know, you know what to do, what to expect. And so Kevin says that, he's messed up, but Madison would be there to fix it, and that their mom would be there also. And so he says that he believes that he finally met someone special. So of course this gets Randall in his feelings, because heaven forbid anybody find happiness, right? And so, he's back in his feelings. Before he was like trying to fake the conversation and tell him, what a joy it is to have daughters, but Beth does all the work and that type of stuff. But as soon as Kevin said that he was happy, that he had ever been, then all of a sudden Randall was like, happy birthday, and jumped in his car and left. Then we have another flashback scene to William, and William is thinking about when he first met Laurel. Remember, they were on the city bus, and then all of a sudden the bus driver tells him that he's home. But William says that he's not going home, that he didn't want to go back to the apartment because, at this point, he thinks that Laurel has died, and that the police are looking for him. The DCF is looking for this baby that has been abandoned. And I thought it was interesting, and it'll probably come up in later episodes, like, why wasn't there a bulletin or a notice put out about this missing baby? And the way that this episode ended, it might tell us why DCF may not have ever been called. So we're back in the present, and Randall is driving, and he calls Dr. Lee, which is his white therapist, And he reminds her that, she had said that very few black men seek her out for counseling. And so, he was like an anomaly, that he was willing to choose her to be his therapist. And so he said that he made a conscious choice to choose a white therapist. Why, I don't know. Maybe it was because he was raised by this white family. And so he says that there are things that he doesn't feel comfortable talking to her about, and this could be impeding his, dealing with things that he's dealing with, his anxiety, and that he's not truly being honest with himself. And so he lets her know that it's not her fault, but he's decided that he is going to make a change and find a black doctor. And she says that she supports his decision because at the end of the day, as a therapist, she wants him to get the best mental health care that is available to him. Now, personally, I don't think a black doctor is going to be able to help Randall. Now, I believe on the show, they're going to make the black doctor help Randall. But I think in real life, until Randall comes to terms with what is really bothering him, then he gonna still have the same problems regardless of who he's telling his problems to, because he tries to hold everything in. He tries to fix everything, and he just doesn't want to be open and honest about, what's going on with him. So then we go back to the cabin, and Miguel and Rebecca are in the kitchen. And so she wants to know if this is what she's going to feel like when things get progressively worse. Like one day you're having a good day, the next day you really don't remember anything. And so she's not worried about forgetting big things. It's the little small things like birthday parties. And, they have a scene from when the kids, I think it was like their 13th birthday. She wants to remember, the things that made her life what it is. She doesn't, care about, big occasions or big happenings that take place. And so Miguel, takes her outside. And when the show first aired, the first episode first aired, there was a tree. She was picking apples to make a pie, and they were talking about this tree, and the tree had died. And so Miguel takes her outside to show her that he has chopped down the tree, and that it's time for new beginnings, and you'll make new memories. And so he gives her some seeds. He pours some seeds in her hand and tell her, they're going to plant the seeds. And, she's like, well, it's going to take like 10 years for it to grow. And that kind of like brought tears to my eyes, because about 2 months ago, I bought these two crepe myrtles. They're called Black Diamond because the leaves are really dark burgundy color, and they almost look black. And then I bought a purple one and a white one. And so I finally started planting the trees, and then I just got like really sad because I looked over into my neighbor's yard, and they have like a regular crepe myrtle. And I remember when the people who owned the house before them, and I'm about to get emotional, the people who owned the house before the people next door, I remember when they planted that crepe myrtle, and then the husband passed away, and then the wife had to sell the house and move in with the daughter. And I looked at that tree, and I looked at my plant, and there probably is only about this much difference between the height. And then I just got really sad because I was thinking I'm planting these trees that I may not live long enough to see mature, and to see them, in their glory, in their full bloom, and the effect of the blooms against these dark leaves. And so that scene just like really touched my heart. And I was like, oh my God. So then we have a scene where Kate tells Toby, about her conversation with Randall. And she says that she's going to have to sit in her feelings for a while because Randall hurt her feelings. Randall hurt my feelings when he was talking to Kate and acted like it was Kate's, that whatever he was feeling was Kate's fault, I guess, because she's a white person. And this was one of the other things that I talked about on Facebook, with the girl that, we were having this conversation. And I said, I put this on Twitter, that I've never expected a white person to apologize to me because a police officer killed a black person. Like, why would I put that burden on a white person when it has nothing to do with them? And I think that, the narrative that's painted around, the civil unrest is this burden that that as Black people, we're putting on white people that somehow they have to fix the problem. When in reality, people say, oh, whenever a cop kills a Black person, that they're racist. Okay, but the truth of the matter is police kill everybody. They kill Black people, they kill white people, they kill Asian people, they kill Hispanic people. And so to say that, last year, I think it was like over 1,000 people, almost 1,100 people total that were killed by police. I think 1,004 were due to police shootings. And then the rest of them were like, the George Floyd case where, this cop put his knee on his neck. Yeah, that was racist. Then there was the Elijah McClain boy in Colorado. And I think I talked about this in other videos, talking about Breonna Taylor. So there are instances where there may be racism, but then there's other instances where it's just bad policing, bad judgment, a rush to figure out a situation when you only have seconds to react. And so to just put that burden on somebody else, who's dealing with what's happening in society, just like we're dealing with it, I think is totally unfair. And so I was telling the girl on Facebook that it seems to me that they're sort of like trying to paint this picture or paint this narrative that Black children should not be adopted by white children. And they're trying to highlight these traumas that are caused by Black children being raised by white parents who don't expose their children, to different elements of life. And then it took me back to that episode where, remember, they were at the swimming pool, and I can't remember exactly what happened at the swimming pool, but kind of like Randall was feeling some kind of way, about the white people at the pool. And then Beth goes over to the Black ladies and was asking them about doing Randall's hair or something like that. It was just like a really awkward scene. So it did show a couple of times and how they they want Randall to go to some college, but Randall wanted to go to Howard University. So there have been occasions where Beth and Jack were really trying, not Beth, when Rebecca and Jack were really trying to help Randall, understand the Black part of life. And remember when him and Beth met at college and the moms were talking and everything. So not really sure the angle that they're trying to go, but the girl that I was talking to, who's the social worker, she was like, I agree. And like what you're saying is correct. It shows that, white people aren't really fully capable of dealing with Black children or Black males in particular, and that something needs to be done. But the only thing that can be done is if more Black parents or more Black people adopt Black children, right? Like you would have to raise the adoption level. And then it goes to an even deeper situation as to why are there so many Black children in the foster care system, that are up for adoption. And so it's just so many layers to the whole thing that you would have to peel back to actually deal with the situation. Then you get into the whole abortion, like the astronomical number of Black children that are aborted, before they can even become children, that are aborted at conception. And so I don't know if the TV show can really get that deep in the discussion. But anyway, we're going to move on. Toby says that, they'll get it right with their children, that they're not going to have all these crazy, confused children like their parents did, and they're going to get it right. And so then the adoption agency called because Kate and Toby are trying to adopt a baby. And so that was one of the reasons that Kate was so shocked when Kevin and Madison announced that they were having a baby. So now they are going to be able to adopt their own child, and then they can experiment with their children to make sure that they are better people. So back at home, Randall blows out his candles on the cake, that they had bought for him. And then he later assures Beth that he's not having a breakdown, because she's really concerned about him. And he says that he's just dealing with work because, he's a council person. And, his constituents are out of work. COVID is rising. The numbers are rising. They got to figure out how to get these unemployed people food. They've got to get them health care. Make sure if they have to go to the hospital. So he's dealing with a lot. Then add on top of that, you got the police violence, and just dealing with loss as a whole. And he says that he's just sad. He's really, really sad. And so Beth tells him, that it's tragedies like these that define our lives. And I'm not quoting this verbatim. And these were words from her dad when he was dying, and that Randall was born of a tragedy, multiple tragedies, and all that loss, all that sadness, is what consumes him. And she says, but look at all that's in the room with them. And he's a beautiful, resilient man. We fight on, she said. The darkest before dawn. The pain is not forever. And nothing in life is forever except them. And that they just got to take all these broken pieces and put them together and create a masterpiece. And that's coming from me. Go back to Kevin, and he gets in bed with Madison and he rubs her belly. And I just really, really think that Kevin is falling in love with Madison. Or maybe he's just falling in love with the idea of being a husband and a father, and he can finally make Jack happy because, they just had, like, their whole lives were shaped by how great of a father that Jack was, not realizing that Jack was a broken person, trying to put all the pieces together as Beth's father had explained Randall to her. So then the show ends. And y'all, this was the part that took me out. And I was like, shut the front door and close all the windows, because we go to a flashback scene where the paramedics, is the same scene where the paramedics are trying to revive Laurel. They can't revive her. The one paramedic tells the one that's doing CPR to give it up, call her, call the time of death, and tells him that, they're going to have to call DCF. And then Randall runs out. And then William runs out with Randall. And then the younger paramedics is like, well, what are we going to do? And the older paramedic is like, that's not our problem. We just got to deal with this body. And then all of a sudden, the young paramedic says, oh my God, I feel a pulse. And then Laura opened her eyes and grasped for air, y'all. So I'm like, let me find out that Randall mama is still alive and there's going to be a reunion. And why in the world did William know? Because I guess William never went back to the apartment, because remember earlier the bus had stopped at the apartment and the man told him, hey man, you going to get off, what you going to do? And he said no, he wasn't going back there. So I'm thinking that William never went back. Him and maybe Laura went into the hospital, went into a treatment program. Child, the writer in me was just all over the place. But I'm like, Lord Jesus, now this is going to be a good episode, a good season. It's setting up to be a good season. So guys, that's it for me. Leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.